Michael Davis found the wallet on a bench outside the grocery store where he'd been sitting for 3 hours trying to stay warm. Inside was $10,000 in cash, credit cards, and an ID for a man named Thomas Blackwell. Michael could have disappeared with that money, could have gotten off the streets, bought food, found shelter. Instead, he tracked down the address on the driver's license and returned it untouched. Thomas Blackwell was grateful, impressed by Michael's honesty, and decided to run a background check before offering him a job. What that background check revealed wasn't just unthinkable, it was criminal. And it had nothing to do with Michael. It had everything to do with Thomas himself and the veterans he'd been secretly destroying for years. If you want to see how a homeless veteran's act of honesty exposed a conspiracy that had ruined thousands of lives, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. This story will show you that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just change your life. It brings down an empire built on lies. Michael Davis was 43 years old and had been homeless for 2 years. Before that, he'd served in the Army for 15 years, including 3 tours in Afghanistan. He'd been a sergeant, respected by his men, decorated for valor. But after his discharge, everything fell apart. PTSD that the VA said wasn't service-connected, disability benefits that were denied, medical care that was delayed and inadequate. His marriage crumbled, his job prospects vanished, his savings evaporated, and eventually he ended up on the streets. He wasn't alone. Michael knew dozens of other veterans living rough in the city, guys who'd served their country and came home to nothing. No support, no resources, just bureaucratic runarounds and closed doors. Michael survived day to day. He stayed at shelters when beds were available. He panhandled occasionally, though it killed his pride. He took odd jobs when he could find them, but without an address or a phone, steady work was impossible. Mostly he just tried to stay alive and stay sane. On this particular morning in November, Michael was sitting on a bench outside a Safeway grocery store. It was 7 a.m., cold enough that his breath fogged the air. The store wouldn't open for another hour, but the bench was in a spot where morning sun would eventually hit, providing a little warmth. Michael had learned to find these small comforts wherever he could. He noticed the wallet immediately when he sat down. Black leather, expensive looking, sitting on the bench like someone had set it down and forgotten it. Michael looked around. The parking lot was empty except for a few employee cars. No one was nearby. Michael picked up the wallet and opened it. The first thing he saw was cash, a thick stack of $100 bills. He counted quickly. $10,000. More money than he'd seen in years. His hands shook as he looked through the rest of the wallet. Credit cards, all platinum or black. An ID for Thomas Blackwell, age 56, with an address in the wealthy part of town. Business cards identifying him as CEO of Sentinel Defense Contractors, a private military company. Michael knew Sentinel. Every veteran knew Sentinel. They hired former military for security work overseas. Good pay, dangerous work. Michael had considered applying once, back when he still had an address and references. $10,000. Michael could disappear with this money, get a motel room, buy new clothes, eat real food for weeks. Maybe even get an apartment if he was careful with the money. Start over. But he'd been a sergeant. He'd been responsible for men's lives. He'd taken an oath to honor and integrity. That didn't disappear just because he was homeless. If anything, it was all he had left. Michael closed the wallet and put it in his jacket pocket. Then he started walking. Thomas Blackwell's address was in Ashbury Heights, about 5 miles away. It would take Michael 2 hours to walk there, but he had nothing but time. The neighborhood was exactly what Michael expected. Massive houses with manicured lawns, BMWs and Mercedes in driveways, security cameras on every corner. Michael was acutely aware of how he looked. Unwashed, unshaven, wearing clothes that had been donated 3 months ago and were falling apart. People in cars stared at him. A woman walking her dog crossed the street to avoid him. Thomas Blackwell's house was at the end of a cul-de-sac. 3 stories, probably 6,000 square feet, with a circular driveway and a fountain in front. Michael walked up to the door and rang the bell, feeling completely out of place. A woman answered. Late 40s, expensively dressed, with the kind of casual elegance that comes from money. She looked at Michael with immediate suspicion and barely concealed disgust. "Can I help you?" Her tone made it clear she wanted him gone. "I found a wallet, Thomas Blackwell's wallet. The address was inside, so I brought it back." The woman's expression shifted from disgust to surprise. "You found Thomas's wallet?" "Yes, ma'am, on a bench outside the Safeway on Market Street." "And you brought it all the way here?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked him up and down, clearly trying to reconcile his appearance with his actions. "Wait here." She closed the door. Michael stood on the porch, shivering in the cold. 5 minutes passed. Then the door opened again, and a man appeared. Thomas Blackwell himself, matching the ID photo. Tall, fit, with silver hair, and the bearing of someone used to command. "You found my wallet?" Thomas asked. "Yes, sir." Michael pulled it from his pocket and handed it over. Thomas opened it, checked the contents, and his eyebrows rose. "The cash is all here." "Yes, sir." "You walked 5 miles to return a wallet with $10,000 in it?" "It's your money, sir, not mine." Thomas studied Michael carefully. "You're military. Former Army. Sergeant. Discharged 3 years ago." "I can tell. The way you stand. The way you say, sir." "How long have you been on the streets?" Michael hesitated. "About 2 years, sir." Thomas's expression darkened. "Unacceptable. A man who served his country shouldn't be living on the streets." He pulled out his wallet and extracted $500. "This is for your honesty and your effort." Michael looked at the money but didn't take it. "I didn't do it for a reward, sir." "I know you didn't. That's exactly why you deserve it. Take it." Michael took the money reluctantly. $500 wouldn't change his situation, but it would help for a few weeks. "What's your name?" Thomas asked. "Michael Davis, sir." "Well, Michael Davis, I'm impressed. Not many people would do what you did, especially not someone in your situation. I own a company, Sentinel Defense Contractors. We hire veterans for security work. Good pay, benefits, travel opportunities. I'd like to offer you a position." Michael's heart jumped. A real job, with a real paycheck. This could change everything. "I'd be honored, sir, but I should be honest. I don't have an address, or a phone, or references, and I haven't worked in 2 years. We'll figure all that out. First step is getting you off the streets. I have a program for this. I'll put you up in a hotel for a week while we process your paperwork. We'll get you cleaned up, get you some new clothes, run a background check to verify your service record. If everything checks out, and I'm sure it will, you'll start training in 2 weeks. Sound good?" It sounded too good to be true. But Michael had learned to accept help when it was offered. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Thomas smiled. "Don't thank me. You earned this by being honest when you could have been selfish. That's the kind of integrity I want in my company." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "Go to this hotel. It's downtown. Give them this card. The room is paid for a week. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., come to my office. The address is on the card. We'll start the paperwork." Michael took the card with shaking hands. A hotel room, a real bed, a shower, food, and the promise of a job. All because he'd returned a wallet. "Thank you, sir," Michael said, his voice thick. "You don't know what this means." "I think I do. Now go get yourself cleaned up. I'll see you tomorrow." Michael walked away from that mansion feeling like his life had just turned around. After 2 years of nothing but rejection and despair, something good was finally happening. The hotel was nice. nicer than anywhere Michael had stayed in years. The clerk looked skeptical when he showed up in his ragged clothes, but the business card Thomas had given him worked like magic. Suddenly, Michael had a key to a room on the fifth floor with a real bed, a television, and a bathroom with hot water. Michael stood in the shower for 30 minutes, washing away 2 years of street life. He shaved. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked older than 43, harder, but also hopeful for the first time in years. He ordered room service, a burger, fries, and a Coke. Simple food that tasted like heaven. Then he slept in a real bed with clean sheets and woke up feeling more human than he had in months. The next morning, Michael put on the cleanest clothes he had, which still looked terrible, and took a bus to Sentinel Defense Contractors headquarters. It was a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. Michael walked through the lobby feeling out of place, but the receptionist was expecting him. "Michael Davis?" "Yes, ma'am." "Mr. Blackwell is waiting for you. Fifth floor, corner office." Thomas's office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Thomas stood when Michael entered, shaking his hand firmly. "Good to see you again, Michael. How was the hotel?" "Better than I've had in years, sir. Thank you." "Good. Now let's talk business. I need you to fill out some forms. Employment application, tax documents, the usual. I'll also need you to sign a release for a background check. We verify all our employees' military service and check for any criminal history. Standard procedure." "I understand, sir. I have nothing to hide." Thomas smiled. "I figured. A man who returns $10,000 isn't the kind who has secrets." He handed Michael a stack of forms. "Fill these out. Take your time. When you're done, give them to my assistant, Sarah. She'll process everything and we'll have you set up by tomorrow." Michael spent the next hour filling out forms. It felt good to write his information down, to exist on paper again. He signed the background check release without hesitation. His military record was clean. He had no criminal history. There was nothing to worry about. He gave the completed forms to Sarah, Thomas's assistant, a efficient woman in her 30s who seemed genuinely kind. "We'll process these today," Sarah said. "The background check usually takes 48 hours. Once it clears, we'll move forward with your employment." "Thank you, ma'am." Sarah smiled. "You can call me Sarah. And Michael, I just want to say what you did was really admirable. Not many people would have returned that wallet. I was just doing the right thing. That's exactly what makes it admirable." Michael went back to his hotel room and waited. He watched TV. He ate real food. He slept in a real bed. And he felt hope building inside him. After 2 years of darkness, light was finally breaking through. But something was wrong. The background check should have taken 48 hours. After 3 days, Michael still hadn't heard anything. He called Thomas's office and Sarah said they were still processing things, that sometimes checks took longer than expected. Nothing to worry about. After a week, Michael's hotel stay ended. Sarah extended it for another week, saying Mr. Blackwell wanted to make sure he was taken care of while they finalized everything. After 2 weeks, Michael started to worry. He called Sarah again. "Is there a problem with my background check?" Sarah's voice sounded strange. Careful. "Mr. Blackwell would like to see you. Can you come to the office today?" Of course. Michael took the bus downtown, anxiety building in his chest. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Thomas's office felt different this time. Colder. Thomas sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. But he wasn't alone. A woman was with him. Late 30s, professional, carrying a briefcase. "Michael, please sit," Thomas said. His voice was formal, distant. Michael sat, his heart pounding. "This is Jennifer Marks," Thomas continued. "She's an attorney. She specializes in veterans' rights and military law." Michael looked between them, confused. "I don't understand." Jennifer leaned forward. "Mr. Davis, When Mr. Blackwell ran your background check, he discovered something troubling. Not about you, about the VA and how your benefits were handled. What do you mean? Your disability claim was denied 3 years ago, Jennifer said. The VA ruled that your PTSD wasn't service-connected. That ruling was wrong, deliberately wrong. And you weren't the only one. We found evidence that thousands of veterans had their claims improperly denied by the same VA adjuster. Michael's mouth went dry. Why would they do that? Thomas spoke up, his voice hard. Because someone was getting paid to deny claims. Someone was taking bribes to reduce the VA's benefit payouts. And when I ran your background check, when I dug into why a decorated veteran was living on the streets, I found the connection. What connection? Jennifer pulled documents from her briefcase. The VA adjuster who denied your claim, and thousands of others, was named Richard Patterson. He worked for the VA for 15 years. During that time, he received over $2 million in payments from a shell company. We traced that shell company back to its owner. She slid a document across the desk. Michael looked at it, and his blood went cold. The shell company was owned by Sentinel Defense Contractors, by Thomas Blackwell. Michael looked up at Thomas, betrayed and confused. You paid someone to deny veterans benefits? No, Thomas said firmly. I didn't, but someone in my company did, and I didn't know about it until I started investigating your case. Thomas stood and walked to the window, his back to Michael. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with anger and shame. When you returned my wallet, I was impressed. I wanted to help you, so I did what I always do. I ran a thorough background check. I wanted to understand why a man with your service record was living on the streets. What I found made me sick. He turned back to face Michael. Your disability claim should have been approved. Your PTSD is clearly service-connected. You have documentation from your unit, from military doctors, from your commanders, but it was denied by Richard Patterson at the VA. So I dug deeper. I wanted to know why. What I discovered was that Patterson had denied thousands of claims improperly, and he'd been paid to do it. By your company, Michael said flatly. By someone in my company, Thomas corrected. I've been running Sentinel for 20 years. I have 3,000 employees. I can't personally oversee every transaction, every payment, every decision. Someone in my organization was running a scheme without my knowledge. They were bribing a VA adjuster to deny disability claims, which created a larger pool of desperate veterans who needed work. Veterans who would take dangerous overseas contracts because they had no other options. It increased our labor pool and reduced our recruiting costs. Michael felt sick. You're saying someone in your company deliberately ruined veterans' lives to create desperate workers? Yes. And when I found out, I immediately launched an internal investigation. Thomas gestured to Jennifer. I brought in outside counsel. We've been tracing payments, interviewing employees, gathering evidence. What we found is extensive. This scheme has been running for 7 years. Thousands of veterans had their benefits denied improperly. Many of them ended up homeless. Some ended up working for Sentinel in desperation. Some died. Jennifer spoke up. Mr. Davis, we want to make this right. We're preparing a lawsuit against the VA and against the individuals within Sentinel who perpetrated this fraud. We're also working with federal investigators. This is criminal. People will go to prison. Who? Michael demanded. Who in your company did this? Thomas's jaw clenched. My chief operating officer, David Brennan. My VP of recruitment, Lisa Torres. And 3 others in the finance department. They created the shell company, funneled payments to Patterson, and covered their tracks. I trusted them. I promoted them, and they used my company to destroy the lives of the people we should have been helping. Did you know? Michael asked. The question hung in the air. No. Thomas looked him in the eye. I swear to you, Michael, I didn't know. If I had known, I would have stopped it immediately. But I should have known. I should have been paying more attention. This happened under my leadership, in my company, and that makes me responsible even if I wasn't directly involved. Jennifer pulled out more documents. Mr. Davis, we'd like your help. You're one of thousands of victims, but you're also the one who led us to discover this. If you're willing, we want you to be the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit. We'll represent you pro bono. We'll fight to get your benefits restored and to hold everyone involved accountable. Michael looked at the documents. Class action lawsuit, federal investigation. This was massive. This was exactly the kind of fight he'd been too tired and too broken to undertake on his own. What about the job? Michael asked. The position you offered me. Thomas sat back down. The job is still yours if you want it, but I'll understand if you don't. I'll understand if you never want to see me or this company again. Will the people who did this still be here? No. They've all been terminated and are cooperating with investigators in exchange for reduced charges. The FBI has seized their assets. They'll never work in this industry again. Michael thought about the last 2 years, the cold nights, the hunger, the shame of panhandling, the constant rejection, all because someone had decided his suffering was profitable. I'll be your plaintiff, Michael said, and I want that job. Because if you're serious about fixing this, if you're serious about making Sentinel into a company that actually helps veterans instead of exploiting them, then I want to be part of that. Thomas nodded slowly. I am serious. This company needs to change, and I need people like you to hold me accountable. Over the next 3 months, Michael's life transformed. Jennifer and her legal team filed a massive class action lawsuit against the VA, against Richard Patterson, and against the former Sentinel employees who'd perpetrated the fraud. The lawsuit represented over 4,000 veterans who'd had their benefits improperly denied. The case made national news. Congressional hearings were held. The VA secretary resigned. Richard Patterson was arrested and charged with fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. The former Sentinel executives faced similar charges. Michael became the face of the lawsuit. He gave interviews. He testified before Congress. He told his story again and again, how his benefits were denied, how he ended up homeless, how a simple act of honesty had uncovered a massive conspiracy. And he worked for Sentinel. Thomas had created a new position for him, Director of Veterans Affairs. Michael's job was to oversee Sentinel's hiring practices, ensure veterans were treated fairly, and create programs to support former military personnel. He had an office, a salary, and the authority to make real changes. The first thing Michael did was establish a fund for homeless veterans. Sentinel contributed $5 million. The fund provided temporary housing, job training, and support services. It helped hundreds of veterans get off the streets. The second thing Michael did was reform Sentinel's recruiting practices. No more targeting desperate veterans. No more exploiting people who had no other options. Instead, Sentinel began offering competitive wages, comprehensive benefits, and mental health support. The third thing Michael did was create a watchdog committee to monitor the company's ethics. The committee included veterans, legal experts, and independent auditors. Their job was to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Thomas supported all of it. He attended every meeting. He funded every program. He publicly apologized for what had happened under his leadership and committed to making it right. The lawsuit took 18 months to resolve. In the end, the settlement was massive. The VA agreed to review all disability claims from the past 7 years. Thousands of veterans got their benefits restored. Richard Patterson and the former Sentinel executives went to prison, and a compensation fund of $120 million was established for the victims. Michael received $85,000 in compensation for his improperly denied benefits. It was more money than he'd ever had. He used some of it to get an apartment, a real home for the first time in years. He used more of it to help other homeless veterans he'd known on the streets, and he saved the rest. But the money wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that justice had been served, that the people who'd exploited veterans were being held accountable, that the system was changing slowly but surely. 1 year after returning the wallet, Michael sat in Thomas's office. They'd become something like friends over the months. Not close, but bonded by the shared experience of uncovering and fixing a terrible wrong. "I've been thinking," Thomas said, "about that day you returned my wallet. If you'd kept the money, none of this would have happened. Thousands of veterans would still be waiting for justice. The people responsible would still be operating. All because of one honest choice you made." "I just did what I was taught to do," Michael said. "Do the right thing, even when it's hard." "Most people don't. Most people would have kept the money and disappeared. You had every reason to, every justification, but you didn't." Michael shrugged. "I was a sergeant. I was responsible for men's lives. You don't stop being that person just because you lose your job and your house. Your values don't disappear just because your circumstances change." Thomas nodded. "That's exactly why you're good at this job. Why veterans trust you. Because you never forgot who you were, even when the system tried to make you forget." Michael thought about that, about identity and integrity, about how easy it would have been to let the streets change him, to become bitter and dishonest, to take shortcuts and justify them. But he hadn't, and that choice had changed everything. 6 months later, Michael was invited to speak at a conference on veterans' rights. The audience was full of advocates, lawyers, policymakers, and veterans. Michael stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and told his story one more time. He told them about losing everything after his discharge, about the denied benefits, about living on the streets, about finding the wallet and the choice he'd made. "I could have kept that money," Michael said. "I could have disappeared, started over. No one would have blamed me, but I knew it wasn't mine, and I knew that stealing, even from someone who had plenty, would make me less than who I wanted to be." He paused, looking around the room. "What I didn't know was that returning that wallet would uncover a conspiracy, that it would lead to justice for thousands of veterans, that it would change my life and the lives of people I've never met. I didn't know any of that when I made the choice. I just knew it was the right thing to do. But here's what I learned," Michael continued. "Doing the right thing matters. Not because you'll get rewarded, not because it'll turn out well, but because your integrity is all you really have. When I was homeless, sleeping on benches, eating from dumpsters, I had nothing. No money, no home, no prospects, but I still had my integrity. I still had my values, and no one could take those away from me unless I gave them up." The audience was silent, hanging on his words. So if you're a veteran who's been screwed by the system, if you're homeless or struggling or feeling like you don't matter, I want you to know something. Your circumstances don't define you. Your choices do. Keep your integrity. Keep your values. Keep being the person you were trained to be. Because that's what survives when everything else is gone. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that integrity creates opportunities you never imagined. The applause was thunderous. People stood. Veterans in the audience were crying. Michael saw himself reflected in their faces. Saw the struggle and the hope and the determination to keep going. After the speech, dozens of people approached him. Veterans who wanted help, advocates who wanted to collaborate, media who wanted interviews. Michael handled it all with patience and grace, remembering what it felt like to be invisible and making sure no one else felt that way. Thomas approached him at the end of the night. "Hell of a speech." "Thanks, I meant every word." "I know you did. That's what makes you good at this." Thomas paused. "I've been thinking about succession planning. I'm 60 now. I won't run Sentinel forever. I need someone who understands our mission, who veterans trust, who has the integrity to keep this company honest." Michael looked at him. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that in 5 years, maybe 10, I want you to seriously consider taking over as CEO. You've proven yourself. You've changed this company's culture. Veterans trust you in a way they'll never trust me. This company needs that. I'm not a businessman, Thomas. I'm a soldier who got lucky. You're more than that. You're a leader. You're someone who does the right thing even when it costs you everything. That's exactly what Sentinel needs. Michael didn't commit. It was too big a decision to make in the moment, but he didn't refuse either, because maybe, just maybe, he could do it. Maybe he could lead. Maybe he could make sure that what happened to him never happened to another veteran. 5 years later, Michael was still at Sentinel. He'd moved up to Senior Vice President of Operations. He oversaw programs that had helped thousands of veterans. He'd expanded Sentinel's mission beyond just security contracting to include job training, education support, and mental health services. He'd also gotten married. Her name was Rachel, and she was a counselor who worked with homeless veterans. They'd met at one of Michael's outreach events and bonded over their shared commitment to helping people. They had a small apartment together and a dog named Sergeant. It was a simple life, but it was good. Thomas was talking seriously about retirement now, about handing over the company to someone he trusted. The board was considering Michael as his successor. It still seemed surreal, from homeless veteran to potential CEO of a major defense contractor, all because he'd returned a wallet. But Michael knew it was more than that. It was about every choice he'd made along the way. The choice to maintain his integrity when it would have been easier to steal. The choice to fight for justice when it would have been easier to accept his settlement and move on. The choice to help other veterans instead of just focusing on his own recovery. The choice to keep being who he was, even when the world tried to make him someone else. One day, Michael was walking through downtown when he saw a homeless veteran sitting on a bench. The man was younger, maybe 30, with a haunted look Michael recognized immediately. Michael stopped. "You served?" he asked. The man looked up, surprised. "Yeah, Marines. 2 tours in Iraq." "What happened?" "The usual story. PTSD, no support, lost my job, lost my apartment. Here I am." Michael reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. "My name is Michael Davis. I work for Sentinel Defense Contractors. We help veterans get back on their feet. Job training, housing assistance, mental health support. Call this number. Ask for me specifically. I'll make sure you get help." The veteran took the card, looking skeptical. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because 7 years ago, I was sitting on a bench just like you. I was homeless. I was hopeless. And someone gave me a chance. Now I'm paying it forward." The veteran stared at the card. "What if I don't deserve help? What if I messed up? Everyone deserves help. Everyone deserves a second chance. Call the number. Let me prove it to you." Michael walked away, hoping the veteran would call, knowing that even if he didn't, Michael would keep offering, because this was who he was now, not just a survivor, but someone who helped others survive. That night, Michael stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking out at the city lights. Rachel came out and stood beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Thinking about that homeless vet you met today?" she asked. "Yeah, hoping he calls." "He will. You have that effect on people. You make them believe things can get better." I just remember what it felt like, when things were hopeless, when I thought I'd die on the streets. And I remember the moment everything changed. Finding that wallet, making the choice to return it. That was the pivot point. That's when my life went from falling apart to coming together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you kept the money? Michael thought about it. Sometimes, I'd have had money for a few months. But I'd have lost something more important. My integrity, my sense of self. I'd have become someone I didn't want to be, and I never would have discovered the conspiracy. Never would have helped those thousands of veterans get justice. Never would have ended up here, doing work that matters. Rachel squeezed his hand. You did good, Michael. You're still doing good. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Try to be the person we want to be. Try to help when we can. Try to do the right thing even when it's hard. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that integrity matters and that one honest choice can change everything, then share it. Share it with someone who's struggling. Share it with someone who thinks doing the right thing doesn't matter anymore. Share it with someone who needs to know that their circumstances don't define them. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're bringing you more stories about people who chose honor over convenience, who maintained their integrity when they had every reason to abandon it, who proved that doing the right thing still matters in a world that often rewards the opposite. Michael Davis could have stolen $10,000 and no one would have blamed him. He was homeless. He was desperate. He had every justification. But he didn't. He returned the wallet. And that choice exposed a conspiracy, brought justice to thousands of veterans, and changed his life forever. Not because he expected a reward, not because he knew what would happen, but because his integrity was worth more than any amount of money. Your integrity is worth more too. Your choices matter. Your values survive when everything else is gone. So do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when you have nothing, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes that one choice changes everything. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to hear this. And remember, you are not your circumstances. You are your choices. Make them count.